Hey y'all, from Spindle Mountain Mercantile. I am Heather. Welcome to my YouTube channel. If y'all are new here, you might want to click on this link so you can find out in the beginning what happened when we bought this doctor's table at the auction that does not stop giving. We paid only $2 for this vintage chest with toys, and it was a steal, y'all. I don't know why other people weren't bidding on it like crazy, because just the toys inside of this and the papers were probably about $150 worth of stuff that we will sell in our booth. After my sweet husband and I finished gawking and Google lensing everything we found in the trunk, it was time to clean it. So I took out my hose and just sprayed it down really good. Then I wanted to use a powerful cleaner that had antibacterial properties in it, so I used some of my Clorox Scentiva. Now the one I use is discontinued, but I would recommend this, and I will leave a link for that in the description. Anything you buy from Amazon, by using my link to get there, Amazon will give me a small compensation, but it won't raise your price at all. In this shot, you can see I'm cleaning off all the wallpaper that was in it. Now, I don't have good enough wallpaper to save in the trunk, but look what was under the lid. Isn't this fun? I did manage to save this. It hadn't, obviously, had things on it for the last who knows how many years. The stuff in the bottom came out really easy. I used this scraping tool that I will leave a link for on Amazon. It's a multi-tool, and I use this all the time. You can watch while I'm removing this paper. See where the wood is? I don't want to ruin the wood, so I'm holding it one direction, and then when I do the paper, I'll flip it over. When I flip it over, it's more like a razor blade edge, and I don't want to use that on the wood part so much as I do where there is paper, because it would scratch the wood. Once I have the entire inside cleaned out, I'm going to use Debi's Design Diary paints in the colors Bohemian Blue, Farm Fresh, and my favorite, Apothecary. I sell Debi's products in my booth in upstate South Carolina, but I don't do mail order. However, Debi has supplied a link just for my customers that they can follow to her website. If you use that link to make any purchases from Debi, she will give me a small compensation for sending you there, and it won't cost you a dime. I will leave that link in the description of this video. I really appreciate every time anyone uses that link, and I appreciate Debi so much for providing it. The technique I'm doing today is ombre. I have only tried this a couple of times, and I've seen it done different ways: dark to light, light to dark, and then different colors varying in different shades. I'm using Bohemian Blue on the corners, and on the back and front I added a strip of Bohemian Blue right down the middle. On the sides I didn't do a middle stripe because it just wasn't wide enough for that. Inside the Bohemian Blue, I did Farm Fresh, and inside the Farm Fresh, I did Apothecary. I only did one coat in the sense I didn't let my strokes dry in between adding more layers. The reason for that is because I am going to wet distress this after I've done the ombre technique. On the front where the decorative metal is, I just went around that with the Bohemian Blue and worked my way away from it, getting lighter with Farm Fresh and then Apothecary. For each color, I'm using a different brush so I won't contaminate my paint cans. Once all the paint was applied to each area while it was still wet, I used a small paintbrush to stipple in between the different colors. I used a different paintbrush between each color because I didn't want the dark to be way over in the light and vice versa. With the stippling, I also kind of just did a little bit of a round technique just to get that paint going back and forth more. Next, I used a damp paintbrush to simply make one stroke up each area where I had put the stippling. Now you can see right there, I used the same paintbrush and I should have switched out. So I just used a different paintbrush to add some more paint and I redid that part. It's okay if you make a mistake, you can go back and fix it. And you know what? I think with something like this, the more layers, the better. I let the paint dry just a little bit, and then I got my paintbrush really wet, and I just started going over everything with that to get it to blend even more and to make some of the red show through. In completely random areas, I pressed harder with my wet brush so that more red would come through. I didn't have any rhyme or reason to how I did this. I wanted it to look totally random, like it had aged over time. I love this next part so much, but after I was finished and I showed my sweet husband, he said, "Oh man, your ombre got ruined with all of those drips." At that point, he hadn't quite seen my vision. What I did was get my brush really wet and I smeared it around in the paint that was on the table. I used it first in the light paint, smeared it around, and I dribbled that down the dark paint on my chest. Then I did the same thing with the dark paint and let it drizzle down the light parts of the paint. When it was completely dry, I used a damp towel and just went one direction, up or down, on the whole entire surface, so I wet distressed it. And again, I used different points of pressure so that it was completely random and more red would show at different areas. I did go over the corners pretty well because I wanted where the nail heads were to have a lot of paint wiped off so you could see the nail heads. They had previously been painted red, so that's the color they showed up as. My regulars know I'm going to add more distressing. It's all personal preference though, so if you don't like distressing, don't do it. In fact, this would look really pretty just with one color. I like distressing though, so I went over where the boards connected, going across, and I added some more distressing there, and then I was ready to start adding my transfers. I am almost embarrassed to show you my stash. Y'all, this is after I filled up this toy chest with transfers. This is what I have left, and I fear there's still some in my she-shack. There's one thing we all can be assured of. I will have more videos on how to use up those scraps. I did use a lot of these Iron Orchid Designs scraps, mostly from the book Brocante, and I'm just going to show you one time how to apply a transfer. When the transfer is cut to the exact size you want, place it on the object in the exact area you want, and give it a good smooth rub with your hand just to give that first adherence. Every Iron Orchid Designs transfer book comes with its own transfer tool. It's just a little plastic stick. You're going to use that to rub the entire surface of your transfer. The plastic sheet the transfer is adhered to is called the carrier sheet. When you've finished rubbing the entire transfer, use your other hand to pull back one corner of that carrier sheet and use your transfer stick to rub at the crease where it's pulling away from your object. If any parts of the transfer aren't sticking to your object, just lay the carrier sheet back down and rub again, and that should work. If it continues to happen, you might not have waited long enough for your paint to dry, or you might need to seal your surface before you apply your transfers. As soon as you're done applying the transfer, use the same carrier sheet to rub the entire surface. This is called burnishing, and it just makes sure all the little nooks and crevices are covered with your transfer. I wanted it to have an appearance like a crazy quilt, where none of the blocks match, but they all kind of go together. On the front, the back, and both sides, I only figured out ahead of time where the big red transfers went. After that, I just started adding things completely random. I didn't even know where they were going to be until they were in my hot little hand touching that hot little trunk. So I'm just going to speed things up, and you can watch all of my randomness as I go around the entire trunk adding transfers. You'll notice right away I did not paint the lid, and the reason I did that is because I have wheels that are the same color of red, and I found them in a big huge box that I bought at an auction. I think I paid $1 for the whole lot, and the wheels I'm using cost about $6 each at Harbor Freight, so that was a total score. I did the same effect with the transfers on the red, but instead of using red because it's red, I used lighter color big pieces and then moved away from those with other colors. I did add a little bit of red here and there if I could layer it on top of something that was a light color. And here is one of the wheels. Isn't that amazing? I love it so much. It has a little bolt, and on the end of it is a nut and 2 washers. The bolt is pretty short, but it fit through the wood just perfectly enough to put the nut on, but not the 2 washers. Now I wanted to slow this down. See that part at the bottom right here? Because this bolt is so short, we have to get it as close as we can to the wood. So we need to use 2 bits to make sure we can fit that wide part into the hole as well. The first bit we're using is the size of the bolt without the threads. So it's just a little bit smaller to get it as close as we can. I'm drilling from the inside because that's where I made the marks to make sure the wheels were the equal distance from the corners. And I'm sorry, my husband's big noggin was in the way. Then I turned it over and went in from the outside with the larger drill, and I only went in little clicks, so I turned it on off until I got just enough depth for that wide part of the wheelbase to fit. Because I used a drill bit that's smaller than the bolt with the threads, it's a tight fit, and that's good because we don't want it to spin around in that hole. You can use a hammer when you get it almost all the way in just to make sure it's flush with the wood. I put it down on the floor and made sure that all the wheels worked. It was just like an IKEA shopping cart, you know, where it goes all wonky in crazy directions. I was so sad there was no one else with an IKEA cart around I could race, because you know I'm gonna do that. After I was finished playing, I was ready to finish up the project with Debi's wax in clear and verdigris, which is also known as shipwrecked. You might have noticed I did not paint the hardware, and that's because I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it. I didn't tape it either, though, because there was already red on it, and I was kind of thinking in the back of my brain that maybe I wanted some of the other blue colors to mix in with it. And I am so glad I made that choice because it turned out great. I used the shipwreck wax on the parts where I did the bohemian, the metal, and the transfers. I wasn't sure how dark I wanted it to be, so I wiped it off fairly fast, but I did it a second time and let it dry a little bit longer. I think the more the better with this because it brought out some of those little crevices and nooks and crannies. I used shipwreck the same way on the hardware on the lid, and then I let everything dry overnight. I then added clear wax over everything. For both waxes, I applied it with a brush and wiped it off with a soft, dry towel. Along with the toys inside the trunk, we found the original hinges and the rest of the hardware. We decided not to use them though because we didn't want little fingers to get crushed or mushed or caught in some hinges. Instead, we decided to use simple black handles that we attached to each side of the lid. It was perfect. The lid is not heavy at all, so it's easy to lift on and off. We just had so much going on this week, I wasn't able to include that in this video. Aside from that, here is our finished toy trunk. Isn't this amazing? If you saw my short earlier this week, you understand I only had one video because my phone broke finally. It's been working on it, right? Yeah, so maybe I won't be having those glitches with my filming anymore, and you guys can have some nicer videos because I got a new phone. If you enjoyed this video even half as much as I enjoyed making it, would you please give it a thumbs up? And don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of the fun here at Spindle Mountain Mercantile. I appreciate you being here today, and I hope until you see me next time, you have a wonderful week. And as always, I hope you are blessed. Bye.